Good morning, good afternoon, and good evening, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome to the first episode of Quarter Circle, where we aim to look back on titles, franchises, and gaming legacies that are 25 years old. Today, we have a pleasant, simple, buttery snack. This is Puzzle Bobble 4 by Taito. Taito used to be a very big name. These guys are responsible for some of the best arcade video games ever. You might be more familiar with their Space Invaders from April 1978 or the original Bobble from October 1986. In March of 2006, they, like all good video game companies, were consumed by a much bigger fish in the pond, one Square Enix. This is sad to see, but it's going to keep happening on this show, so get used to it. Technically, they still make games in the vein of the original franchise today. Bobble 4 Friends from November 2019. I just doubt that anyone who worked on the original titles had a hand in those. So we're going to get a little bit of story here. I'm not really sure what the motivations or lore in the Bobble universe is, or what these characters' names are, but I'm relatively certain that it doesn't matter, and that you're pretty good to not read all this, but I'm going to show it all anyway because it's something. So I'm aware that if you play as different characters, you get slightly different story. I assume that the universe is falling apart in the exact same way as in this story, and that the only way to solve it is to play Puzzle Bobble 4. Look at this. If this shit doesn't put a smile on your face, I don't know what will. It's colorful, fast-paced, and will keep you coming back for more. Its 3-color matching gameplay has been a tried and true staple of gaming. When mobile games eventually become all the rage, these types of games would really flourish. Bejeweled from PopCap Games, May of 2001, and Candy Crush by King, April 2012. Those come to mind, but I bet a million copycats exist in that space. Speaking of copycats, I have found that these two's names are Bub and Bob. So now you know. Because I know you were dying to know the names of the main characters of Bobble. So who is this lady? What is her deal? Why are we asking her for bubbles? Who knows? But she's not giving us any, so we have a fucking problem. I gotta say, I really love the backgrounds going on in this level. It's pretty cool. I don't know why I have this recollection, but I really thought that Bub and Bob were either like assist trophies or that Bubble Bobble was in the Masterwork program for Super Smash Bros. Like the demos and Brawl, but they're not. I'm totally wrong about that. We also have some very cute sprite work going on with these little anime characters. Gameplay is smooth and delicious. You match 3 of the same colored bubbles and watch them disappear. You're given some points, but let's be real, no one cares about your high score. This shit is survival of the fittest. As you can see, whenever you clear a color and make some bubbles fall, it can cause magical reactions to clear that color of the falling bubble, which can chain these massive screen clears that just dump tons of bubbles on your opponent. So we defeat this little Russian ice princess girl thing, and we move on to the next area. And I find this really interesting. Mr. Poseidon here or whatever, he says that you can get these rainbow bubbles that we're looking for if we beat him. So he's confirming that he actually has problem-solving material with our goal here, unlike the little girl we just beat up. Taito manufactured arcade games in the US for a very short while. Eventually they had to rely on guys like Midway to manufacture arcade cabinets and Acclaim to publish games in the US. Puzzle Bobble is also known as Bust a Move. It's a spin-off of Bubble Bobble. Puzzle Bobble 4 was released into arcades globally in December of 1997 and re-released many times, but of particular note for this show, Microsoft Windows, in January of the year 2000. The music isn't anything I'm going to be listening to without being forced to. If I had it my way, I would crank the music down, but keep the sound effects and voices. It can hurt your gameplay to play this stuff on mute. Visually, it tries its best to communicate the same cacophony of noises this game can produce, but it's a passable soundtrack, even if it comes off as literal baby nursery music. Unlucky players might find this versus mode not to be your cup of tea. But don't worry, an honest-to-God single player also exists. There are so many times in the single player that I just get so close to death, and then BAM! Just win out of nowhere. I don't even think I was anywhere near actually killing them. I think they just killed themselves, basically. When editing this video, I actually found that the pink little frog lizard thing enemy is actually a baby in a suit. I don't know how I missed that when playing the game, but going back through and editing, yeah, weird baby. So I think that Puzzle Bobble is like one of those perfect games to get somebody to play who doesn't usually play video games. I think that, you know, like Tetris or like, you know, Bejeweled, Candy Crush, this is just an awesome game to get people to play who don't usually play games. It's competitive enough that they can feel like, you know, they're doing something, and not so debilitatingly difficult that they feel like they just are lost and have no idea if they can ever learn how to play it. And you know, arcade games used to have to do that. I had a stepmother whose favorite game in the world was Pac-Man, and she was just baller at Pac-Man. I watched her play when I was a kid. She was a total badass. She was way better than me, and it's because, you know, while she doesn't play games, those games had to be available and intuitive enough for people who don't play. These animated balls and sprites and spells look very fun. The backgrounds look cool and have some nice flavor and flair. Plenty of these game modes to choose to, with training, normal, and expert difficulty settings. We only play expert because we are real gamers TM. Plus this shit is free on the Internet Archive, so I highly recommend you just give it a go. It took me 3 hours to get all the footage for this video. So the Y2K moment is to the arcade gaming market what the asteroid that hit the dinosaurs was for them. They aren't all dead yet, but they almost all will be very soon. This is where stuff just starts to go downhill for them. Obviously, some companies will find a niche in the environment, but while they may survive, they no longer will thrive like their competition in the console markets will. I'm a little confused by the totem pole enemy. Clearly in the cutscene he's alone, but in the actual gameplay there's two kids dancing around him, and he's gray and inactive unless they're doing stuff, so I mean, like, is he sentient? Is there like a magic spell being cast on a regular totem pole? Like, what's going on here? So for all of the Puzzle Bobble lore heads, this chick is actually our problem child. In the story for her campaign, she steals the rainbow bubbles from, or like starts to steal the light or whatever from the final boss. So she's a fucking liar here. She is the reason why this is happening. I know you were all dying for that information, so wanted to make sure you got it. This whole game really is just, this is kawaii as shit. I have some pictures to share of what Taito game cabinets used to look like. We all know what a normal game cabinet looks like. But how many of these have you seen? That's right, before things were streamlined into looking all the same, you know, the few analog buttons and a joystick, we had like racing wheels, knobs, guns, and whole ass fighter pilot cockpits. Obviously, Bobble and Puzzle Bobble had one of these more simple two-player setups. Puzzle Bobble is special in a way that not many people can appreciate. The history has a lot of layers, from Taito to arcades to some of the cross-pollination taking place. I never actually played these Bubble Bobble games as a kid, but I did play Snood from David Dobson, 1996, which I assume most Americans are probably more familiar with. It did come prepackaged with some older Microsoft and Macintosh operating systems. I wish they had somehow worked out just getting Puzzle Bobble on those old systems instead, because even as a kid I thought Snood was ugly as hell. Look how close I was to dying here then. Bam! Doing research for this video, I found that the creator of Snood is a real interesting character in his own right. He's an author and game designer of plenty other ugly as sin games, both board and video games. This was going to be the moment I wanted to say that since Puzzle Bobble predates Snood by a few years, the ball shooting puzzle mechanic must be from Puzzle Bobble, and that's kinda making Snood a thief. But I'm not too sure if that's true anymore. Dave could have stolen a lot of really good ideas from other games at the time in the mid-90s, and didn't, or at least wasn't nearly as successful. The quality of his work says he just can't. But while I have no idea if this is true, the ball shooting thing must have been a much harder mechanic to make, right? The trick was probably making this type of puzzle gameplay shareware. Today you can still play all these games mentioned for free, so I'd love to see who won the battle of the hearts and minds of players after all these years.
And look at this guy. He's telling us that, you think I'll just give you my bubbles? Yes, I do think you will. We've been traveling the space-time continuum and fighting tons of people to get all this rainbow bubbles back to go save the universe, and this guy's just been sitting around his weird little favela alien setup. You'd think that this Eldritch Nightmare alien would be totally understanding about this little dragon's plight. You know, this just goes to show you that even if the world was ending and there was a real chance the sun will not rise tomorrow, there's always going to be guys like this frickin' alien who just will not help you. Even if it's in their interest and they could just help you out, they just choose not to because, you know, they just don't like you. They don't get it. So this little evil dragon here lives in an environment I can't really identify as any structure I know of, but he is an evil dragon. And you're a good dragon, so the fight's basically over.
Honestly, the two-player experience is so based on luck. I already mentioned that sometimes it feels like the enemies just kill themselves and I'm not even doing anything, but sometimes it just feels like you get fucked. Like, it's so bad. I've cut out a lot of my deaths in this game, but yeah, sometimes it just feels like you're just so screwed and there's absolutely nothing you can do about it. You just have to restart and hope for better layouts of bubbles and better dealings of the different colored bubbles. In that way, it truly reminds me of Tetris. The feelings you get where you're just like, man, if only I had that line block. Most of my deaths in the player versus computer mode were to this little black dragon. I died so many times trying to beat him. Probably at least half a dozen.
This is what I'm talking about with the art again. I mean, look at this. This is beautiful. This is like some kind of H.R. Geiger techno, like, Blame stuff. Like, this looks awesome. Side research moment. Blame came out in January of 1997, and this game came out in December of 97. So you can actually say this environment was probably inspired by Blame. Cool. I have to give props to the sprite animators again. I mean, this guy is super cool. And he's got tons of little different animations that are just all over the map, from this explosion stuff to these like laser beams. Like, I would love to have a puzzle game where you could just shoot your opponent in the head as you're fighting. I want to talk a little bit about arcades and cost versus just buying these games outright. I'm not trying to count up deaths and see how expensive it would have been for me to play this game in an arcade versus having just bought a copy of it at home. I mean, that conversation's done and dusted. It's way cheaper just to buy a game at home because you can literally play it forever versus having to repay, 25, 50, 75 cents per death. But I would be totally sweating and like palms clammy getting to the final boss of a game like this if I really had to do this with no deaths, or I had to actually be paying, up front every single time I died. I would be totally freaking out internally. Which, in a way, I assume the game is designed around, but it is sad that these kinds of games just don't have that zeal anymore. There's no sense of actual danger here at all. Sad, really.
Seeing that stack of bubbles caused by your enemy at the bottom of the screen is truly a horrible feeling, knowing that the second you launch this bubble, you're about to get totally screwed. The giant old lady robot moon is very strange and is creepy as fuck. I'm very glad that this isn't real. Oh shit, that wasn't even the real final boss. This is the real head honcho. So I looked it up. Apparently this is the drunk mage, the antagonist of the regular mainline Bobble games.
I didn't edit anything there, by the way. Like, it just goes straight from Evil Moon Lady to Drunk Mage. There was no transition, there's no, conversation you have with the Drunk Mage. He's just kind of here now.
I think that in the versus mode, playing as different characters actually gives you different abilities based off of how you break the bubbles. I'm not actually sure. I didn't play as any of them. Like I said, it's been like 4 hours recording this, and I don't see why I should spend like 3 more per character. There's like 8 characters in this game. And the only character I actually want to play as is the Drunk Mage, and I don't even think you can play as him. Poseidon's cool though. Poseidon's really cool. I would play as him. And that's it. That's Puzzle Bobble. That's the end of the story. I'm aware that I could get more endings if I play as different characters, but this has already taken like 40 minutes of your time, so I don't think there's any reason to go through every single possible ending of this game. I don't think you're missing out on any kind of amazing writing that is going to completely change your life. So yeah, in the single player experience, we have 2 different types of puzzles basically. We have the ones on ropes and pulleys, and we have the regular static ones. I've sped up the footage of the static ones. I find them extremely boring. I mean, you have to be kind of brain dead to not be able to solve these. But the ones on the pulleys actually can be kind of tricky. I know this is a dumb gamer fight thing, but, you know, gamers have never been known to be extremely rational people. I do think some people are going to claim that the puzzle mechanic was stolen from some other games. Dr. Mario from Nintendo, July 1990, or Puyo Puyo from Compile, October 1991, or even Dr. Robotnik's Mean Bean Machine, Compile, November 1993, which are coincidentally also all spin-offs. But for huge-ass nerds who want to talk big shit right now, and bring up Taito's Puzznik from 1989, I will direct you to the following chart. Yeah, I know, this is the kind of high-quality gameplay you came here for. I died plenty of times trying to get through the single player experience, especially some levels. Some levels really gave me a run for my money. But the two-player, the player versus computer mode, I pretty much died like once per go on each guy. Yeah, I pretty much died once per guy on each go. There's no reason to go through every single death I had. This video is already like 40 minutes long. This video is already like 40 minutes long. I promise not to take more than an hour of your time.
So I want to talk a little bit about arcade culture. Arcades are, of course, rare nowadays because of the obvious. They've gone the way of the dinosaur. They're still kind of there in some respects, you know, like an alligator in a muddy riverbed, but they're pretty much gone. But I have found barcades, you know, a bar, adult setting, where you can also play arcade games somewhere in like a basement or some other room. I always thought those were pretty cool. But I've heard that apparently people think that that's kind of like a man-child thing to do. Like, oh, you still feel like you have to go play video games, or you have to like fake drink so you can go play video games at an arcade, or God, you still want to play it at an arcade, like what the hell? So I wonder if there'd be like a middle ground where, you know, instead of paying 25 cents a pop for every single death in a game, if you could pay like, you know, a membership fee to go into like a round one or something and just be able to play all you want, instead of having to feel like, you know, this place is too much for children. Like, give your kid a roll of quarters and let them just go play at the arcade because you can get rid of them for a couple hours, so why would you want to play there? You're basically playing video games at a daycare center. On top of that, they have barcades where you are an adult, and this is a place in a setting for adults to hang out, but we still have, you know, Pac-Man. Round 1 in particular confuses me because they have the bowling alleys and like, you know, pool tables, so clearly this is just a place for families. Like, just bring everybody and everybody can just have some fun. You know, dad can go bowl or play some Area 51 but their kid can go and play mobile games for 25 cents a pop. I'll never understand that.
Here's some more 800% speed, boring, static, single-player, expert puzzle bobble.
So we got a little bit of dead air here. I want to give a little statement of intent again on what this channel is supposed to be. Quarter Circle's attempt is to cover games that are 25 years old. From the history lesson I've already given on this game, it's already known this is over 25 years old, but technically it had it released 25 years ago. The whole point of this series is going to be to cover games that were released 25 years ago. Like, hopefully that would be their actual release date, and that would be the first time you could have played them had you gone back in like a time machine 25 years. I'm going to try to make all of those release dates North American release dates. That's not always going to be possible, but I'm going to try to keep it that way. The idea is, like, you know, if you had a time machine right now and you could hop back to the past 25 years, what games would you be able to go out and play right now? And technically Puzzle Bobble falls into that category, even if it had already been a couple years old. But if you fell into an arcade, you'd be able to find it there. Again, this is supposed to be expert mode, so I'm not really sure what the puzzle would be like if we were on baby mode. Like, what?
If you look really closely, you can actually see that when the bubbles explode, they turn into all sorts of different shapes, but mostly in the single player campaign, they turn into like little potions and stuff, which plays into the whole casting magic spells thing that happens when you clear huge amounts of the screen. This pixel art just makes me so sad. I mean, it's so beautiful, and it spends a couple years in an arcade and then no one ever sees it ever again. I mean, again, Snood, ugly as hell, forever in my memory, but this game has different colors for the bubbles in each the single player and the two player mode. I was not expecting to see that many different variants of the bubbles. I gotta say, on the note of people being inspired by this title, the little green character standing next to a rope with something shiny and blue dangling from it is giving me really cut the rope vibes. Somebody can tell me if I'm completely asinine for thinking that, but it really looks like it to me. There's actually a moment here where you can watch that I hit the 500 IQ moment of my gameplay here. I realized that I basically am going to die if I place the wrong bubble in the wrong place, and I just send it straight up to the sky just to bounce it back down so that I don't have to deal with it. It's the only way to skip bubbles. If there's another way, I don't know. One of these levels during the single player segment really busted my balls. I'm gonna fast forward through this so you don't have to witness my shame. Thank you very much for enjoying this little demonstration of arcade history. I'd love to hear what you all think of Puzzle Bobble 4. I promise that the game we cover next month is a title that with no exceptions was released in February of 2000. Have a very nice rest of your morning, afternoon, or evening.